So I'm Neha. I am the editor-in-chief and chief operating officer at Girlboss, and I'm incredibly excited to be here with three really smart founders who run three very different businesses to pick their brains and talk all about certainly the entrepreneurial life, but also just leadership, fundraising, all of those things that I think can be hard to navigate, but these women have done really successfully. First, we have Steph Corey, one of the co-founders of Away, and then we have Amber Balde, who is a co-founder of Clover and a blockchain expert, and then Sarah LaFleur, the founder and CEO of mmleflare. Ladies, I'd love for you guys to go down the line and just talk a little bit about your businesses and the story of how you founded them.
Hi everyone, I'm Steph. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Away. Away is a direct-to-consumer travel brand. We make suitcases and other travel products for the modern traveler. We utilize a really tight customer feedback loop to constantly make products and experiences that will genuinely make travel more seamless and enjoyable for everyone so that you feel comfortable getting out there and traveling more and expanding your horizons and making new connections. Our company is almost 2.5 years old, and when we launched 2.5 years ago, we were 4 people. We're almost 200 people today, so never a dull moment. And for this group in here, if any of you have had your eye on getting an Away suitcase, we have a code set up for you. It's Ellevate, and it's going to work for the next few days.
Hi, my name's Amber Balde. So I co-founded Clover just about 8 weeks ago at this point, so it is a relatively new company. Thank you. I was previously the blockchain lead at JP Morgan, so we can talk about that transition a little bit. But Clover is developer frameworks and tooling for building blockchain applications. A lot of people don't really know much about what blockchain is yet, so it's kind of interesting that we're building tools to build stuff on top of it. But yeah, it's really the first place that or the first set of tools that you can use to deploy applications to either a public blockchain that you might have heard of, like Ethereum, or to build these like very large-scale Fortune 100 enterprise networks, because what I would like to do over time is bring those things together into one kind of connected internet of value where both businesses and people can connect to each other.
Hello everyone, I'm Sarah LaFleur. I'm the founder and CEO of mmleflare, which is named after my mother. is her nickname. I've been at this for 7 years, so I'm ancient in startup land. It's been a long time. And what do we do? I think the best way I can ask this question is by just actually asking you how much time you spent getting ready this morning. Did anyone manage to do it in less than 15 minutes? Oh, a few hands, very impressive. 30 minutes? 45 minutes? That's where I am. An hour and a half? So often when I ask this question, I still see hands at 2 hours. You are a much more efficient crowd. And I think the stat that I am astounded by every time I hear it is that women spend on average 15 more days a year getting ready compared to men. And so I used to work in the business sector. I had to dress a very specific way every morning. I had so many moments of what am I going to wear this morning? And always felt like I had lackluster options. And my mom worked in high-end fashion. I think through her I got to see and touch these beautiful clothes. So I thought to myself, how can we bring these beautiful, luxurious pieces to the everyday professional woman? And so I partnered with my co-founder, Miyako Nakamura. She was the former head designer at Zac Posen. And we started this line. We launched it 5 years ago. So that's our business.
Can I tell my mmleflare story now? Because I'll tell you what you actually can do. So when I worked at JP Morgan, you might notice that I didn't get the memo that it was apparently like maxi dress day. But I worked in this highly corporate environment, and I maybe don't look like a highly corporate person. And now, of course, that I can do whatever I want, I've apparently taken that and run with it. But at the time, I really had trouble finding clothes that would fit in because I don't screen for that, and I don't have the decision-making time to worry about about it. So I signed up. I'm one of your customers. But to get have other people tell me what women are supposed to look like when you kind of have to fit into some of these spaces, code switching and fitting in is like totally a thing that matters. And then I didn't have to worry about it anymore. I do the same thing with jewelry and other
Oh
stuff.
my gosh, thank you. We need to bring you on as our PR person. That was amazing. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sign her up as a spokesperson. So I want to start by talking about leadership because you've all built businesses that are of different maturity levels, but you've had different careers before this, right? Steph, you worked at startups from Casper to Warby Parker. Sarah, you worked in management consulting, and Amber, you were at JP Morgan Chase running a business inside of a business. But what did you take from those previous careers that let you set up really intentional things? Like, what are the things about your cultures that you're building with real purpose based on what you've already learned?
So I think over the course of my work experiences, I saw the full spectrum of companies that were very thoughtful about like what are our values, what are our operating principles, what's important to us, why is it important to us, and having that be something that is so well understood across the company and so aligned on. And then to the other end of the spectrum where the leadership just didn't think that was important at all and it didn't come up as a topic and it was a little bit more of a free-for-all. And not only is the former like so much more of an empowering and enjoyable place to work, but it leads to so much more company success. So from the start, when Jen and I were first starting the company, I mean, even when it was just the two of us, we would spend hours and hours talking about if we pull this off and can grow this business in a way where people work here who aren't the two of us. What is that culture that we want to create? What are our guiding principles? What's our North Star? And then it's just been a very iterative process. Iterative is one of our core values, spoiler alert, but just like constantly reevaluating and testing and learning and nothing set in stone of this like constant journey of like how can we do things better and how can we be more thoughtful. And that really engaging our team and like co-creating that has been what's worked really well for us.
Yeah, I think working in a large corporation, whatever that corporation is a valuable experience. And because you get to see how people who have already spent 30 years building a business have arrived at some decisions. And sure, maybe the bureaucracy isn't always fun, but having an HR department that functions probably is. So one of the reasons that I had always avoided startup land was that the culture stories are so terrible, and you're working a lot of the times with people who are just like, oh, we'll figure it out as we go, like onboarding process, what's that? So having run a team inside that larger organization where we did have autonomy, I was running a budget, learning on other people's money also, definitely a great idea. And so, you know, I learned how to build healthy teams. I learned how to recruit people internally and externally. I learned how to speak to people that are very high above my pay grade and sell the same message across a global organization where you're not even necessarily just talking to people in your time zone. So it was very, very valuable.
Yeah, I'll add to that by saying I've worked both for companies that had a really strong HR people department and companies that did not. And the difference that I felt, you know, and I was junior in both of those companies, but the difference that I felt and just the power that I had and the voice that I had to navigate my career was night and day. At the first company that I worked for, where there was a really strong HR department, I felt like I could control my career. And at the second company that I worked for, I didn't, and ultimately I left much, much earlier than I had intended to. And so when we started mmleflare, actually it was my other co-founder, Nuri, who was like, we have to put our values down on paper. And at this point I was like, are you kidding me? We can't even like pay rent. Like, why are we spending time writing values down on paper? But she was absolutely right. And so we have 10 of them. And when we do our onboarding process, I'm actually the one who takes our new hires through each of our 10 values. And one of them is, it's a Japanese word, it's called kizukai. The closest probably English translation is empathy in action, but this idea that, you know, if someone walks in looking hot, an empathetic person might say, oh, you look you look hot, like, can I get you a glass of water? The person who displays kizukai would actually just grab a glass of water and bring it to them. And we try to say, okay, let's practice this with each other. Let's practice kizukai with each other, and hopefully, ultimately, also our customers and suppliers. But that's probably the most core value that we've built ourselves on.
I love that. We're still just a year old at Girl Boss, and we have spent so much time thinking about values and thinking about how do you set that North Star at the very beginning so that, when you have 5 employees, when you have 20 employees, when you have 200, everyone knows exactly what they're running toward. How have you done that? Steph, I'm really curious, especially as you've scaled to 200 people so quickly, how have you ensured that everyone understands exactly what the single purpose of the company is? Because your brand is so tight.
What I've come to realize is we just repeat the same things over and over again, and just when you feel like you've become such a broken record that everyone's just about to completely stop listening, everyone hears it. So there's just so many moving pieces in any startup, I mean really any company, but especially a startup where things are changing so much and new people are joining all the time, that what we've realized is there's no amount of frequency that's too much frequency, especially on core things like what are our values, what does our brand stand for, what is our mission. We have an all-hands meeting every Wednesday morning. We talk about these things basically every week. We recently had our first town hall meeting as a company. We had 2 hours where all we did was talk about what do our 6 core values. And it's 2 hours talking about what do our 6 core values look like in action. And these types of, I think, conversations and being able to hear from the whole team and engage everyone in the process and keep reiterating the message over and over again is how we can grow so quickly. But instead of all sprinting in opposite directions, I'll be sprinting in the same direction together.
That's great.
Yeah. Well, at Clover, I mean, we're obviously super young, and so we're just starting to set that journey. But we have 2 pages on the website, and one is the homepage that talks about all of what we're doing, and the other page just is called Culture. And it expresses that in this highly technical space, we value all members of our team, the technical and non-technical people. And I think that the rock star developer culture that pervades tech is just highly toxic. And we need to completely get away from that. So my co-founder, Patrick, who is kind of a Viking and Scandinavian, kind of a feminist, I guess that's just called being Scandinavian. But he absolutely was like, of course we're doing that. And it really has made a difference even from day one, from the second that we announced, of people that have had inbound investor interest that said, you're the first company in this cryptocurrency sector that I've ever seen put culture on your page as a founding principle. And it's making a difference even that early.
I love that. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about something that you brought up, Steph, which is you have to change a lot. You have to be so agile and willing to make shifts. Sarah, something that I've heard you talk about is, inventory wasn't moving, and then you had to sort of come to this realization about your customer and how she didn't really have that much time to shop, and that shifted your messaging. But I'm curious, how did you collect enough data to understand that about this woman? But what was the process of actually making the pivot? Because I see a lot of founders say, okay, we have this idea, we're running toward this goal, and then we're just gonna take a right turn, and you can sort of end up spinning in circles. So how do you do it in a way that's strategic?
Yes, so the story that she's referring to is really the story behind how we were able to stay alive as a company. So I mentioned I've been doing this 7 years. Our company launched in 2013, so it was 5 years. And I would say the first year was crickets. I thought this e-commerce thing was supposed to be easy. I worked at the company that the Bonobos and Warby Parker founders had also worked at, so I saw them making a bunch of pants and glasses and selling them at surprising prices and making millions. And I was like, oh my God, this thing, you build it and they will come. And it really was not like that for us at all. And I think what I didn't realize is Our dresses are not cheap. They cost anywhere from $165 to $365, and so the prices in and of itself were not disruptive or surprising at all. What we were doing was taking a $1,200 dress and selling it for $250, but that's not shocking to anyone on the internet. And we sell boring black dresses, and you don't really understand just how good this dress is until you put it on. And so I think online that story was impossible to tell. And so we really struggled with this the first year. I think we thought we were going to go out of business on several occasions. And in early 2014, we had this moment where we were in our warehouse, by which I mean like a 100 square foot room, and we looked around and we were like, oh my God, we are gonna go under a mountain of inventory. Like, we are going to die because there are so many dresses packed to the rim, and we can't move them quickly enough. And that's when we said, like, well, we've got 1,000 customers in our database. That's not many, but like, maybe we should just email them and see if they'd be willing to keep any dresses. And so we emailed these 1,000 customers, and 18% of customers responded, yeah, sure, send me a box. Like, I haven't had time to order from you in a while. And we ended up making more money that 1 week than we ever had in any month up until that point. So that was the first light bulb moment, I think, and it was not strategic, right, to your question. Like, it was desperation that prompted us to be like, please take our dresses, try them on. But that was the big signal for us, and I think we piloted it, and it was a total logistical nightmare. My team hated me. They were like, why are you doing this to us? Like, this is not a good customer experience. We really had not figured out the details, but ultimately we said, okay, this is the direction we have to go in. We've tried a lot of things, and this is the only thing that seems to have legs. So like, let's essentially we bet the farm on this strategy. And so we took down our old site and launched this new model, which we ended up calling the Bento, and launched it October 2014. So you can see, again, it took another 6 months for us to launch that properly. And overnight, our revenue tripled. It was, to this day, like the craziest thing I've ever seen. Thank you. It was crazy. Thank you. But like, nothing about our product changed, right? Not the pricing, not the branding, not anything except the way we were talking to first-time customers. So we've had, I think as we've grown as a company, we've become more strategic. Like, now we actually do things like A/B testing. But like, when you're initially getting started, you're kind of saying like this is a make or break moment. And so, and I think as founders, you often feel like, okay, I have nothing to lose because I just put everything into this, and it's okay to have those moments and to actually listen to your gut and try a few things. I mean, so long as your team is small and you haven't raised a ton of venture capital financing, you have a lot of room to make mistakes. So I think often when I'm meeting early stage entrepreneurs and they're like talking about VC funding, I'm like, you realize like you are getting on the fast track now. You can't really make a ton of mistakes after this. And so anyway, long answer to your very great question.
I just want to add a +1 to if people have this vision of like early stage founding teams, which before I was one, I thought this, that like every decision is so data driven and strategic. It is not. Like, it's just, you're like, what could we get done by tomorrow? Like, let's just do that. To the point that when we were raising our Series A, which was like 5 months after we launched the business, we had an offer from a great investor. We wanted to work with them. They were in the diligence phase, and the investors team asked, okay, we need to see like a cohort analysis for like, a monthly cohort, like sort of a complex thing to put together. And I just responded to them. I was like, we're 5 months old, 6 people work here, and we sell 1 product. Like, I'm not giving you a cohort analysis. I don't know if I have better things to do.
Good for you for saying that.
And they were like, okay, that's fine.
That's a great point. I think, when do you learn to push back rather than spinning yourself into the ground trying to answer every last question? I want to talk about fundraising and VC funding specifically. Steph, you guys have raised $31 million now over an A and a B. I'm curious about the experience, because I think you guys were pretty strategic about how you seeded the business out to partners or out to venture partners. But I'm more interested actually in what did it feel like when you got the no's, right? Like, how do you sort of get back a no, this isn't a right fit for us, like, we're not going to invest today, and then keep going and pitch the next guy?
Yeah, so when we were raising our seed round, in the course of 1 week, we met with, I think, 25 seed venture funds on both coasts. So we went from the East Coast to the West Coast to the East Coast to the West Coast in 1 week. And I think 23 out of 25 of them were like, there's got to be something better you guys can do with your time. Like, no one cares about this category. You guys seem pretty smart. Like, don't do this. Yep. And the way I felt about it in the moment is so different from how I feel about it now. So in the moment, I think it was just sort of like soul crushing for us, right? We were like, well, we don't even really know that much about this, and these people do this all the time. It seems like they're probably right? Like, should we be doing this? And we connected with Forerunner Ventures, who ended up leading our seed round. They're a women-founded and run VC, and yeah, I think over the last 3 years since those conversations happened, it was just about 3 years ago that we were doing our seed fundraising. It's been really interesting to be on different industry conferences and running into the people who said no to us 3 years ago, and seeing the direction the business has gone in since then. And every once in a while they're like, yeah, we were wrong. That happens all the time. We were wrong. I'm like, you should tell people that when you're telling them their business is a bad idea, that you're wrong all the time.
I mean, fair. I feel like the fundraising process is so soul crushing sometimes, and it's hard to not feel like every no means that you need to rethink the whole business. And we work partially in a media business. That's a tough place to raise these days. So it's really fascinating what you hear out there. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just actually came from a meeting where I was meeting two entrepreneurs who are looking to start a new lingerie business. And they're like, we've been fundraising for 4 months and we haven't gotten a single yes, and it's a slog. And I will repeat to you what I just said to them, which is, it's not your deck and it's not you. Like, people will try to give you so much feedback on your deck, and then you're like, I don't need your feedback on my deck. I just need you to sign the check. And I also told them, I was like, you are entering into the summer months, which is the hardest time to raise. I distinctly remember trying to raise July, August. I did not realize that rich people go on their yachts in the Mediterranean during this time. And so I would, slog myself over. I would take the subway over to some office, and I would be dripping in sweat as I arrived, because of course I don't have enough money to take a cab. And I would switch out of my flats to my heels outside, and I'm so sweaty that it's sticky. And we would have some meeting, and it would be kind of mediocre, and they'll be like, oh yeah, well, I'd love to keep in touch, maybe we could chat in August. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna be in Switzerland. And I'm like, oh. So that's fundraising during the summer months. I will say it is the single most painful thing I think I have had to do, aside from making sure that my company doesn't go under in the early days. And it is hard for everyone. So it's not you. I just have to emphasize that.
Actually, Sarah, I'd love to hear your thought on this, because I feel like one of my big learnings from having gone through the fundraising process a few times is that confidence is everything.
Yes.
Just
not needing
confidence.
Yes.
We had, when we were doing our Series A, we did it over the summer. We started talking to people about it in late July. I missed the memo on that one. And there were a couple people we got put in touch with who were like, you should just stop talking to people about this until September. Our whole industry is on vacation for the next 5 weeks. But let's set up a lunch for September 27th. And I was like, oh, we're definitely gonna be done by then. And just saying that, they were like, oh, FOMO's going. Okay, let me get my partner who actually isn't leaving for vacation until next week. They can meet with you, that type of thing. So just that confidence of, that's okay, you'll just miss out, was enough to get some people being like, okay, I gotta make this happen.
It's so true. I think you get your first term sheet and then it closes within the next week. That is, every single round, that is how it's happened. They don't want to be left out of the conversation. And you think they have all the cards. Like, I think to your point, you actually have a lot of cards too. You just have to play them right. There is a huge game element to it.
And you have to know you have them because they're not going to let it on.
Yes.
So true. I want to shift gears a little bit because we're running pretty close to out of time. Amber, I want to hear a little bit about, well, I think for the uninitiated, halfway through the conversation, can you do just like a quick overview of how you think about blockchain?
Sure. Explain blockchain in the last minute. So a blockchain is what you should be interested in if you don't want any VCs to ever tell you no, apparently. It's a very different kind of landscape that I have right now. I think in our first 48 hours of just having a website up, we got 2,500 messages and 50 different investor inbounds and very insane kind of introductions to people that I thought I was going to go need to find network connections to. So what blockchain is what people think the future of the internet is. And that is this kind of internet of value, right? So we have an internet of information right now. If you have a picture and you email it to somebody else, you have a picture, they have a picture, and you're both happy. If you want them to get rid of that picture, it's almost impossible to do, impossible to prove. Snapchat is not really a thing. But it works fine for email, but it works really bad for anything that once you send it, you shouldn't have anymore like that. So whether that's $1 or intellectual property rights or theoretically a vote if identity was a thing. And so creating a market for cryptographically scarce or digital assets is essentially what we're doing in a very global kind of a way.
That's great. And I want to know a little bit about, so you worked...
I totally get it now.
We're all good, right? Questions later.
I mean, a blockchain is an Excel spreadsheet in the sky, all right? Like the cloud is just somebody else's computer. The blockchain is just all of our computers collectively coming to consensus over a spreadsheet. The only difference is that right now you use Google Sheets. Google owns that. Google sits in the middle of that. Google probably surveils that, and they can also tell you when you no longer have access to that. The blockchain is simply a shared spreadsheet that nobody can tell you cannot commit some change to that keeps the order of transactions running. So it's censorship-resistant peer-to-peer communication. Is that better?
So, unlike some of the investors that are reaching out to you, I've read a lot about, so you were heading up the blockchain business inside of JP Morgan, and I've read a lot about the CEO, Jamie Dimon's skepticism about crypto and the space. What was it like navigating being inside of that organization and getting the resources you needed, getting the trust that you needed inside of the org, knowing that the CEO is kind of like, I could take it or leave it?
Well, Bitcoin is a specific digital asset. It's kind of like saying, I don't like this particular stock, but I like the idea of the stock market. So the Bitcoin system, it has a blockchain, right? So Bitcoin sits on a blockchain, so does Ethereum, Litecoin, Zcash, whatever. There's all these different tokens. There's also enterprise systems that are looking to use the same technology that don't use cryptocurrency at all. So what we were investigating was how to use that underlying ledger to remodel the way that financial markets work. For example, post-trade settlement of existing securities or correspondent banking. So the technology has a lot of applications that aren't just Bitcoin. And I think what he was just responding, I mean, it's not my job to continually just speak for Jamie Dimon, but I think that, when you get asked on panels over and over, what do you think about Bitcoin, when really your job is about macroeconomic issues globally, you start to just be like, stop asking me that. And then there's a consumer protection angle. Everybody was like, why don't you love Bitcoin, into a run-up as the price went from like 8,000 to 20 in December. But there's a consumer protection angle that if they just say, oh, that sounds great, and then what is it at now, 6,700? There are a lot of people that went home at Christmas and said, Mom, Dad, why don't you buy Bitcoin, that are now have some explaining to do. So I think there's just a see, I can help you, you can help me. So yeah, there's just, I think that when it comes to something like a bank of that size, what they say matters in the markets, and some skepticism is fine. It's not necessarily, I mean, maybe he snapped a little bit, but there's a lot of volatility. It's not for everybody.
All right, I think we are out of time for this piece of the panel, and we're going to throw to Q&A, which I believe has already been sourced from social.
That's right. Thanks so much. Actually, this question is for you, Neha. How has your network helped you get to this point in your career?
I think my network has been everything. I can't think of a single job that I have had so far that I didn't leverage a network for. Even, my very first paid internship when I graduated from college that paid $6 an hour. I got that through someone in my alumni network. And every job after that has been about a former boss or someone that I've met at a work event saying, hey, you should look at this job, or come work for me, I'm leaving to do this other thing. So I think without not just building the network, but sustaining it and staying in close contact with people and adding value to their lives after we first connected, I probably wouldn't have made any of the moves I made.
Thank you. I think we actually have time for one more question. How do your values help guide your company in times when you may have to pivot?
Well, I will say one of our values is renegades, and we say under that value, defy, disrespect, disobey. If someone else has done it, then don't do it. So I think that's actually a huge part of our motivation to pivot and to continually be doing something different.
Yeah, I think all of our values guide everything, and when you're in a startup, it's maybe not like a TechCrunch headline pivot, but you're always changing something. You're always discovering something that's changing something pretty meaningful basically every day. So we just try to be really thoughtful about our decisions. How are we considering the viewpoints of all of our colleagues and different stakeholders into any decisions we're making? How can we be really collaborative and in it together? How can we be very customer obsessed in all of our decisions? That's our most important one. So whatever decision we're making, it has to be in the best interest of our customer. And I think with those types of principles, we can figure out just about anything, at least so far. Yeah. We'll see.
And I'd say that coming into this from that more corporate side, that there was a certain amount of, people say be authentic, like it really means something, you just go be authentic. But that, those values are something that you carry with you all the time. And definitely I kind of have stuck to my guns over the years of, I've always valued digital privacy. I've been active in that community for, more than a decade, I guess, being close to information security and other things. This is stuff that a lot of other people in the room didn't necessarily have. So being different in that way, it's not just about how you look, but it's about your interests and the things that you educate yourself on in your free time, such that now that it's not only just the core of our business, but why people are interested in what I'm doing versus what some other people are doing, is that I've been able to kind of bridge this gap between the crazy cypherpunk hacker people and what's happening in the real business space. Could I have predicted that this as a technology would take off and I just happened to know stuff about it? Not really. But if I had simply gone full banker just because I was in that room, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. So hang on to why you're different.
That's great advice. All right, Sarah, Amber, Steph, thank you. That's it for us today.